morning. This is Art Baker here. I'm your instructor. I see about 18 participants on this call. I think there's more people who are enrolled, so you may have more people join, but let me start it on time. And at the beginning, I will be just kind of talking about introduction, course format. So if people join in progress, that's okay. But for the next few classes, try to be on time. We'll start promptly. Did anybody have any problems dialing in? That some people, I assume, may have some technical issues. Was there any? Was it easy to find the link and click on it?
Yes, no problems here.
All right, good. I personally, I'm logged in on 2 devices. On one of them, I just clicked on the link and it worked. On the other one, I had to enter a password. And I thought some other people may have that. So I kind of put it up right on the homepage on Canvas, just in case people need this password. All right. Well, maybe if you don't mind, just turn on your cameras, keep them on for the class. I'd like to, for the class to be interactive, and I'd like to be able to see you. So I'll walk you through the slide deck today, and we'll solve quite a few exercises together. So let me jump into my agenda. So it'll be quick introduction. I'll just introduce myself. Sometimes in smaller classes, I let people talk about their backgrounds, but I understand that you are MBA students, so I'll kind of cater my material accordingly. Then we'll talk about course format, when we meet, what topics we cover. And then, the majority of the class will obviously be covering the material. The topic for today's discussion is time value of money. Very foundational course to corporate finance. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on theory. I assume that you've looked at the videos, you've solved problems for the homework. So the format for today's class will be very similar to the homework that you had. So we'll go through exercises and solve them together. Just a quick slide on me. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I just put this map just kind of for fun, showing the places I've lived. If you're curious about my accent, I was born in Russia, spent the last 15 years in North America. I moved around quite a bit. I think I've lived the longest in Toronto. That was 10 years. But apart from that, I've been moving around. Started with my parents. They were in military, so we had to move every 5 years. And in the US, I've lived in Michigan. I worked at General Motors. And then I lived in California, and I've been in Dallas for 3 years now. So I've been teaching at SMU for a couple of years. I teach applied financial modeling. I spent most of my professional career in investment banking. So if people are interested about investment banking culture, working environment, and what they do, happy to take questions or have kind of offline conversations. I also teach at IBI, which is Investment Banking Institute, and that's really a school to prepare people to join investment banking. So I kind of like to share that experience. But outside of that, I've been in the corporate world doing, my last role has been Chief Strategy Officer with a private equity owned company here in Dallas. So let's talk about class format, what's expected of you. You'll see 20% of your grade will come from homework assignments. You can find them on MyLab Finance. Did everybody get access to MyLab Finance? Was there any problems? No, I assume everybody here was able to access MyLab Finance. The nice thing about it, you get answers right away, and it's kind of coaches you as you go through problems. So I think it's a great system. I've split the assignments in two parts. So the majority of assignments will be due before class, but then there is probably like a third is due after, just to kind of refresh the material. And after the class, I usually give more advanced problems, so that you have benefit of covering the material in class. And then midterm accounts for 30% of your grade. It'll be class number 4. We'll take it at the regularly scheduled time, so it'll be November 7th, same time as now. We'll take it on XPrep. Oh, sorry, not XPrep. I use that for another class. We'll take it on MyLab Finance, the same way as you do your homework. They'll look very similar. And then final exam, again, will be similar to midterm, just a little bit more problems. And that will be on December 5th, after Thanksgiving break. Professionalism and participation, there's guidance in syllabus, but for the course, have your cameras on. And I would encourage you to actively participate. I actually like online format. I think, it's kind of more direct, you can ask questions. So yeah, I would encourage you to speak up. I might call on you, but if I just ask the class generally, don't be afraid to raise your hand and answer the question. That will go towards your participation grade. And usually kind of think of it as, we have 5 classes outside of 2 reserved for exams. So for each class, you can earn 2 points if you actively participate. If you just stay on but don't speak up, you'll get 1 point. And if you miss a class, you'll miss 2 points. Any questions on the format? I know people usually kind of like to ask questions about exams, what to expect. So now is a good time, or you can ask later too.
Would you say that the midterm and the final are basically like sort of like an assortment of similar problems that we're already going to be doing?
Yeah, that would be very similar to what you would have done in the homework, and we'll review that in class as well.
Yeah.
The difference will be midterm will cover obviously like about half of the class, and then the final will cover the entire class, including the first half.
Okay, thank you.
One question, I think in the syllabus, it mentions about the exam that we will not be allowed to use Excel or anything like that. Is that gonna continue for both midterm exam?
I had this question before. I'm a little bit split. I like Excel personally, but I would encourage you to use calculator more. These financial calculators, they have very nice functionality that allows you to actually solve quicker than in Excel. So I try to minimize the use of Excel. Again, rely on the calculator. But I'll probably allow Excel on the exam. I'll have to see kind of, if there are problems that require Excel, then you obviously will have to use it. But don't kind of rely on that as your primary tool.
Thank you.
Hi, Professor. I have a question about the exam midterm. So about how many questions will it include?
Well, think of it as a 2-hour exam, right? So I haven't created it yet, but you know, it'll just kind of keep you busy for 2 hours.
Okay, and so if we do our homework and understand every question, we should be confident doing the midterm?
Yeah, it'll be very similar as your homework and as we do in class.
Okay, thank you.
Professor Baker,
Yes.
do you have a preference on the BA2 plus versus the HP 10?
That's a good question. It actually, you know, is quite important. I think in the syllabus, I mentioned that I'll be using a 12C HP calculator. And actually, I don't have the other one. So you know, like if you ask me, like I can only point you to how to do things on HP. And you know, these two calculators, they're both allowed for CFA program, which is a great program. I would recommend it. That's kind of why we selected those two. So I think I mentioned this in syllabus. I will be using HP12C. I think ultimately they do the same things, but they are laid out a little bit differently. You know, they kind of, the way you enter information is a little bit different between the two. So, and it's actually, you'll see it kind of very quickly, you know, it'll be important that you can follow me. So, you know, since you brought it up, I wanted to point you to this. I found this, it's called Chrome extension. So I'll show you to my screen here. And it's actually very easy. So what I'm trying to say is, if you have Texas Instrument, the other type of calculator, you can still, you don't have to purchase HP. You can just download this Chrome extension, and that will allow you to follow what I'll be doing on my calculator. And I think, you know, that should kind of bridge that gap. So you can use the other one. The other resource I wanted to point out is, oh, it's actually on syllabus. So on syllabus, under modules, sorry, and on Canvas site, in modules, you will see a very handy guide. So it's in module 2 at the bottom. It's called a Time Value of Money Tutorial, Financial Calculator and Excel Help. So that file shows you how to do common things for both calculators. So for example, if you see me do net present value on HP calculator, you can find that calculation for both calculators in that file. So again, if you have the other kind of calculator, I would encourage you to use that or use Chrome extension just to kind of mimic what I'll be doing.
Thank you.
Does it answer the question? I know it's a little bit long, but it's actually very important because, you know, like a lot of this class will be working in financial calculator, and I'd like you to kind of follow what I'm doing. And you know, if you have the other kind of calculator, and if you're not used to it, then you may be a little lost. But actually, like I just installed this Chrome extension this morning. It takes like 30 seconds. So you may even like do it now if you don't have HP calculator, and just that'll allow you to follow exactly what I'll be showing in today's class.
Yeah, I have both. I'm just not as comfortable with the 12C, but I'll get there.
Okay,
So thanks.
good, yep. Any other questions?
I do have a question. So for the videos from the module classes, I already talked about how we should focus on my lab assignments for the final and for the midterm. Should we rewatch the videos for the midterm for the final exam?
You know, I think the videos are great. They are introductory though, right? They introduce concepts. For example, they don't show you how to like plug in numbers on a calculator, right? Like, you know, how to use a calculator or kind of how to think about these kind of unique problems that we'll be doing. So definitely watch the videos, but I'm not sure that's the best tool for exams. I would encourage you to solve as many problems as you can and kind of ask questions. Make sure you understand everything that you're doing in class. Because again, exams are kind of very applied, right? And the videos are just kind of, theoretical and introductory.
Professor?
Yes.
Basing off of what information is being provided here, I am assuming that the questions will be heavily leaning towards actual problems and basically
That's right.
theory questions at all.
Sorry, say the last part.
So we should not expect any theory questions, right, on the exam? Mostly.
That's right. Yeah, there wouldn't be like, give me a formula, because you're allowed to use a 2-page formula sheet, right? And that's kind of as theoretical as it gets, right? Understanding those formulas, understanding what they mean. Yeah, so exam will be solving problems. And again, very similar to what you'll be doing in your homework.
Thank you, Professor.
So, Professor Baker, if we have problems doing the homework assignments, where can we go for help?
I already had some emails set up office hours with me. And the way to do that would be use Calendly link. It's on Canvas. So yeah, if you're completely stuck, feel free to set up an appointment with me. But I actually like how My Lab Finance guides you. It has a lot of tips and suggestions to help you solve the problem. So I would say start by watching videos, kind of getting comfortable with the theory, review the textbook, obviously, right? I mean, and then, you'll kind of solve problems. And then if you're just not clear on something, reach out to me.
Yeah, I did that, and I just found that some of the problems were pretty challenging, and I was just looking all over the place.
Yeah, I think where you could, where it could be challenging is, like a lot of them kind of have tweaks. They introduce not new concepts, but kind of would apply a concept in a kind of in an interesting situation. So you have to kind of figure out how to apply a formula for a specific problem. And that's where, I can see where you could have a problem. But I think that's how you learn, right? Like you read the textbook. I mean, the good thing is with online format and videos, you cover a lot what you would do kind of in a regular class. Like I don't need to repeat, the textbook and give you all that information. So we can jump right into problems in the actual class.
Thank you.
Professor, I have another question.
Yes.
So I see that the class is being recorded. Will these videos be posted online so that if we need to ever reference back to problems that we did in class, we'll go back?
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's another source. Good discussion. Let me jump. And again, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I live in downtown, and typically it can get pretty loud, especially on Saturdays with construction down the street. So if we ever do get called on and it's just too loud or something like that, will we get penalized, for just the noise in the background?
What counts is your participation, obviously. Well, and we would like you to be in a quiet place, but like if the area where you are is like that, yeah, just make sure you participate, right? And I would say speak up rather than say, well, I can't do anything, right? Just do your best, and we'll get through it together.
Sure. So I'm just apologizing ahead of time to the class.
But yeah, good. Thanks for the heads up.
So,
yeah, I appreciate the heads up.
Absolutely.
All right. Let me move on. Class schedule. I like to have this page just kind of keep us oriented where we are in the class. So today is obviously the first lecture or first class. We'll talk about time value of money. And then next class, we'll talk about bond and stock valuation. It sounds impressive, but it's basically applying these concepts that we'll study today to bond and stock valuation. You know, bond and stock valuation could be complex. You could spend your entire career, and you know, like if somebody knew the magic answer to what stocks and bonds should be worth, you know, they would be probably, you know, making a lot of money. So it's kind of, it's never-ending pursuit, but we will cover it at a fairly simple level next class. And then we'll continue to apply these concepts to capital budgeting. So we'll spend time thinking about discounted cash flows and what goes into those cash flows. And then we'll have a midterm exam. I kind of put, you know, it may sound a little bit kind of cryptic here, but I think it helps. So if you look at pre-class reading, so these are chapters from the textbook that go with each class. So for today's class, it's primarily chapter 4 on time value of money, a little bit from chapter 5 on interest rates. And then on Canvas, you have modules. So for today, it's module 0, 1, 2. And obviously homework is from 1 to 5. So just kind of organizes things a little bit for you.
Mr. Baker, you
Yes.
note that the pre-class readings were from chapters 4 and 5, and there were 2 sections from chapter 5. Would you suggest reading the full chapter in order to have a more broad context for the exam and material, or only what is referenced on the modules?
For chapter 5, like we're not going to cover the sections in the chapter which are not required. So, you know, I mean, it's good material for broad knowledge, but you're not going to be tested on it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, and now we just get right into problems. I actually have quite a few for today. So this was it for the kind of introduction, level setting. I'll give you the last chance kind of to ask general questions, and we will jump into solving problems.
Professor Baker, we are
Yes.
able to solve problems on our calculator. How much of like our knowledge of like memorizing the formulas or knowing the formulas are on the exam?
You can use a 2-page called cheat sheet provided on Canvas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that document, that's 2-page document, it includes all formulas you need to know. So, and you know, like, I mean, some of them are more complicated than others. I mean, I would encourage you to learn like simple formulas like perpetuity. It's just like R divided by G, fairly simple. But you know, let's say like growing annuity formula is quite complex. You don't need to memorize it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's not really about memorizing formulas in this class. It's more about applying them.
Okay.
Anything else? All right. So this first slide is pretty general. It illustrates this law of one price. Basically, that tells you that same assets should be traded at the same price in different markets. Otherwise, there would be arbitrage opportunity. And let's kind of find if there's one in this problem. So we have an exchange traded fund that holds 2 securities, Facebook and IBM. So six shares of Facebook and 4 shares of IBM at current share prices. So let's calculate what's the value of this exchange traded fund and compare the value of underlying instruments to the value of the exchange traded funds. So I'll kind of just to get us started, I will solve it for you, and then I'll kind of call on some people, or you know, if you know the answer, feel free to speak up. And hopefully you can see my handwriting well here. I'll kind of experiment with it. So the math here is fairly simple. So it's taking 6 shares, multiplying it by 1 37.14 for Facebook, plus 4 shares of IBM multiplied by 101.98. Let me do that quickly. You know, later on, I'll show you my actual calculation, but I'll punch it on calculator here. Just it's quicker. This is pretty simple math. But you know, in other cases, I will actually show you in that Chrome extension so that you can see what I am entering. And I would encourage you to follow along and do your own calculations. So I get 1230.76. Did anybody get something different? So let me ask you this question. So if the underlying instruments are worth 1230 and the exchange traded fund trades at 1234, what arbitrage opportunity exists?
You should sell the ETF and I'm sorry, yes, sell the ETF and then purchase the number of shares of each of the individual stocks. I think that's the opportunity.
Yeah, you're right. You know, like the way I like to kind of memorize it, or you know, like kind of famous saying, buy low, sell high. So understand what's low here. So 1230 is lower than 1234. So buy, as you said, buy the underlying shares and then sell ETF. So that's how you would exploit this arbitrage opportunity. And in reality, these things happen so quickly that, you know, the true arbitrage opportunities are really hard to come by. But, you know, there's whole profession of traders that tries to exploit it. Any questions on this one? All right. So I'll have these kind of theory overviews in my slides. So this is not a problem, obviously, but let me quickly walk through it. And I know there's probably people who are just kind of getting introduction into finance. So let me know if you are not clear on these concepts. So these are so fundamental to everything we'll be doing. So let's make sure we understand them. So basically, you know, we have present values and future values. And to convert present value into future value, we use interest rate compounding. Think of it, you put money in the bank, you know, it earns you interest, right? So all compounding does, it calculates interest on principal and interest on interest, right? That's really kind of the only unique thing. Otherwise, everyone is familiar with, you know, how, you know, accounts work in the bank, for example. So that's compounding. And discounting, it's really just the reverse. Mathematically, it's very simple. It's just a reverse of compounding, right? So you divide future value by the discount factor, 1 plus R. R is the interest rate, to the power of T, where T is a number of periods. So once you divide future value by discount factor, you get present value. So it's just mathematically, it's just the reverse. And kind of fundamentally what it does, it converts future value into the present value. Right? I think it's very simple. Did anybody want to discuss anything here? Because we'll be using these formulas pretty much in every class.
So T is N in the textbook.
All right, I'll move on. Just to confirm, can people hear me? I think there's kind of, okay. T is N, yeah. I mean, these formulas, Yeah, so don't be concerned if you see different letters. Just to confirm, can everybody hear and see me well? I had some slowdown in my internet.
Yeah, you for
Okay, good.
Woke up for a little bit, but we're okay now.
Okay, good, good, good. All right, let's move on to next problem. Time value of money, single sum. And I'll be using a lot of timelines in this class. Pretty much every problem can be kind of dissected using a timeline. So let me read this problem and draw a timeline for you. So your grandfather put some money into account for you on the day you were born. So this is the timeline. This is the day you were born. You're now 18 years old and are allowed to withdraw the money for the first time. You currently have 9,940. And the question is, how much money would be in the account if you left it there until you're 25? So how many years are there between when you are 18 and 25? This would be the number of periods. Go ahead.
7.
7, yeah. So it's T or N, doesn't matter. So let's call it N is 7. I interest rate is 8%. And we just need to use compounding formula. So let's do it first kind of using the formula, and then we can switch to financial calculator. So future value, we just saw that, future value would be 9,940 times 1 plus 0.008 to the power of 7. Can somebody run that and tell me what the number is?
17,035.
Perfect. Yeah, that's the right answer. So 17,035, and I get 41 cents. Any questions here? I'm glad you guys are speaking up. Appreciate it. So how much money would be in your account if you left the money until your 65th birthday? So same problem, same timeline. So 0, 18, 25, 65. So again, the value in year 18 is 9,940. So the question is, what's the FV in year 65? So we start with the present value multiplied by 1 plus interest rate, right? 0.08. And how many years should we be using here?
47.
47, perfect. Can somebody do the calculation?
I got 370,686.
Perfect, perfect. That's the right answer. And then the last part here, how much money did your grandfather originally put into the account? So that requires us to take the present value at time 0. And the way to do that is to divide 9,940 by 1 plus 0.08. And then the number of years is 18, right? 18 years between when we were born and when this 9,000 was given to us. So what's the value for that?
Got 2,487.
Yes.
2,487. Yep. Perfect. I like it. I like how quickly you do that, and good. All right. Well, I guess this is a warm up, right? Fairly simple, and let me know if you've got questions. But you know, like just kind of to raise the level of complexity, I will show you maybe for the next problem. I'll show you a couple ways to do it, right? Because it sounds like you're quite comfortable doing it this way, but you'll kind of will raise the level of complexity a little bit for the next problem. Let's talk about present value. So present value is takes present value of benefits minus present value of costs. In the formula, you see these these sums, which are just what we've seen in the prior formula, right? So it takes future cash flow in year 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth, and discounts it by 1 plus discount rate to the power of number of years. So individually, these are just taking present value of those cash flows, and then we add them up. So typically, the cash flows that we discount, they're positive, but they don't have to be positive. And then cash flow in year 0 is negative. It's kind of the initial investment. So in the traditional project, you would have initial investment, negative, and then subsequent cash flows that are positive. NPV is a very powerful tool. It's probably one of the most important tools you'll learn in corporate finance. And it shows you the amount of wealth created or destroyed by accepting a project. A project can be still profitable. So what it means is these cash flows, C1, 2, 3, they could be positive. The project could be making money, but NPV could be negative, which means that once you discount cash flows from the project, their sum is still less than the initial investment. And in that case, you typically, you shouldn't be pursuing a project with negative NPV. But the good thing is, there are typically lots of projects with positive NPV available to entrepreneurs and businesses.
If your NPV was at a negative, at such time, it's like, do you just stop the project and that's a sunk cost, or?
The problem is, you're kind of now in the middle here, right? You're going through the project, but your investment in time 0 would typically be sunk at that point. But the way to deal with sunk costs, you then look at what's ahead of you, right? You can recalculate and say, well, like, would we have done this project with negative NPV? And the answer should be no. Like, if you knew that it would be negative NPV, you shouldn't be doing it. But once you're in the middle of the project, then you treat your costs as sunk, and then you see, well, what does it take to kind of remediate, because there's probably some additional investment that's required to bring it back on track.
Professor?
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, T would not necessarily be a yearly value, right? I mean, it could also be the term period that that's being calculated at? I mean, it could be 6 months and it could be calculated at every 6 months, or does it have to be like every year, the calculation for
No, we'll actually do a lot of problems today where period is not a year. What's important is that you match the period for which you have these interest rates, the R's, right? That's the only thing that you need to be aware of. So like if you're using daily, for example, daily cash flows, then make sure that your interest rate is on daily basis.
Okay.
And then you can use it. Then mathematically it should work, but just make sure that like if you're not using annual values, then your interest rate is adjusted. Okay. And we'll do that together. You'll see how to do that.
Oh, I got a question about the daily compounding. In the exercise, I think they divided by 360 or 365. What exactly we are using for finance?
Sometimes for option pricing, people are using 360. So in practice, you'll see both 360 and 365. But unless you're doing these kind of applied finance, like kind of derivatives, I would recommend, like we all know what number of days in a year is, right? And it's 365. So that's what I would recommend for this class. But you will see a 360, just because like for some finance people, it's easier. Like if you look at, for example, quarterly cash flows, you kind of don't want to think, well, what's in that particular quarter? How many days are there? It just kind of complicates your calculations. So people just say, well, it's 90 days, and then you multiply that by 4 to get your annual number of days. But I get this difference every time. I would say use 365 in this class unless you're instructed otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good. I appreciate the discussion. I love it. Thank you. So time value of money, multiple cash flows. You received a windfall from an investment made in your friend's business. So he'll be paying you 3 cash flows. Let me draw that. Okay, let me draw it here. So that's our timeline. 0, 1, 2, 3. So 38, 023 is first cash flow, and then 43, 652 is the second one, and then you got 65, 478. It's pretty simple. So we can do a couple of things. We can discount it using the formula, or we could use the financial calculator. Let's maybe do quickly. Let's do both. I think this is kind of we're doing it fairly quickly. So let me just do the first one here. So if I take 38, 023 divided by 1 point, so the discount rate is 10.07 to the first power, what do people get?
I got 34,347 and 79.
Perfect. 34,347.79. I don't have space here to write out these formulas, but if somebody could calculate maybe 2 more. So 43,652 divided by 1.107 to the second power. What would you get?
I got 35,621 and 22 cents.
Yep, perfect. And 22. And the third one, just 65,000 divided by 107 to the third power.
I got 59,149.
I don't get that. Let me do that.
I
so
got 48,000.
Yeah, 48,267.
Yeah.
yeah, okay, that's right. So it's just, I guess there was a typo somewhere. So 48,
267.
yep.
0.24.
Yeah, and then what you need to do for NPV is add these numbers up.
Yeah, the total is 118,236.26.
236, right? 26, right? 118. Let me see if I can delete that. Make it a little bit. All right. So that's our NPE, 118, 236, and 26. Now let's go to financial calculator. So the way I would start, there's a couple of things I do every time for my calculations. Like I usually press F CLX, which clears numbers. And then let me press F5 to add number of decimals, just so I can see more precise answers. So to do the NPV calculation, I don't know if you can see this. Can I make it? Well, I see it with this plugin. I can't make it any bigger. Can you see these small blue numbers? CF0, CFJ. Can you see that on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Well, and if you have a calculator, it's even easier. So basically, the idea here is on this calculator. So you switch between the yellow and blue numbers by pressing F or G. So if you press G, you get to these blue cash flow entries. So the way to do NPV calculation with variable cash flows. So you enter these individual cash flows by pressing G, CF0 or CFJ, and then interest rate is just this white I letter. So let me do that and see what answer we get.
Did you say the link to this download? Where can we get it, or what can we search?
Just type it in Google, HP12C Chrome extension.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then I think you need to install a little file, and it'll get you this. Or if you have the actual calculator, punch it on your calculator. So I'll enter the numbers here: 38, 0, 2, 3. I'll keep it positive. So my NPV will be negative, but that's fine. If I don't enter CF0, the initial cash flow, it'll treat it as 0. So I'll start with CFJ. That's my cash flow 1. 38, 23. And then number 2 is 4, 3, 6, 5, 2, and then I press G, CFJ again. And the third one is 6, 5, 4, 7, 8, J, CF, G, CFJ. And then interest rate. So interestingly, in this calculator, you enter interest rate as if it was in percent. So you don't need to divide it by 100. So you type in 10.7% and then press I, and then press F NPV. That gives you 118, 236, 26, which is what we just had, right? Any questions? I get comfort kind of getting the same number to different ways. So if you want to be perfect in your exam, you can try it at different times and If you get the same number, then you're correct. Okay, so the next problem is about changing interest rates. So Wells Fargo offers a new savings product. You make the following payments for the next 5 years. Let me sketch them out. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it kind of grows by 100 every time. So it's 300, 400, 500, 600, 700 year 5. So the difference here is that for the first 5 years, the interest rate I is 9%. And then for the next 15 years, so for the following 20 years, it is 4%. What's the value of this lump sum in year 25? Right, so it's 5 years at 9%, and then 20 years at 4%. So in year 25, we need to calculate the future value. So let me kind of give you a clue for a solution, and then we can calculate it together. So the way I would suggest that we address this problem is that we first calculate the present value of these cash flows at 9%. And then we'll kind of bring that present value to the value in year 5, also at 9%. And then, so that's step number 2. And then we'll compound it for the next 20 years. Does it make sense? Let me free up some space here. So let's see present value. We could do it both ways. We could use the formula, or we could use the calculator. Let me maybe use the calculator here. So I will clear it. So I pressed FCLX. So 300 was the first cash flow. 400, second one, 500, third, 600, fourth, and 700. Fifth. The interest rate is 9%. The present value is 1878. Do people get that?
Yep.
Good. And then what I can do, just to use the formula here, I can say if I multiplied by 109, so remember the compounding formula, you take 1 plus the interest rate. In this calculator, I enter, and then to the power of 5. So I'm compounding for 5 years at 9%. So 109 and then I press this y over x. So this is my compounding factor. And then I press multiply. That gives me 2,885.54. So that's the future value of these cash flows in year 9. So in year 5, right? So let me go back to this timeline. So present value was 1878. Future value in year 5, we just calculated that, it's 2889. And then the next question is, what's the future value in year 25? So you just need to do what I just did. So multiply 2889 by 104, right? So the new interest rate is 4% to the power 20. What's the answer for that?
6,331.
Yeah, 6,331. So that is the answer. Great. No, it's going quite well here. Any questions? All right. Simplification formulas. So this formula is the one I mentioned in my comments. You know, very fundamental, simple to remember. The value of perpetuity. So perpetuity is a stream of cash flows forever. And C is the cash flow. It's the same cash flow. So if you have the same cash flow happening every year forever, to get the present value of that cash flow is just take that C divided by R, and R is a discount rate. If perpetuity grows, you subtract the growth rate G from the discount rate. And, you know, kind of nuance here is that you take cash flow year from today. So see how it says C1. So if you're given a cash flow and then it will grow in 1 year, then you have to multiply that cash flow by a growth rate in 1 year, right? So C1 quite typically is C0 times 1 plus G. So that goes here. Annuity formula. I usually like to think of it as kind of, if you're curious kind of where it came from. So this is our timeline. So annuity is recurring cash flow for a certain number of years. For here it's T number of years. And the way kind of this formula is derived, so you basically take, you could first apply a perpetuity formula at time 0, and that would be C divided by R, right? And this is not a growing perpetuity, right? So that's the value of perpetuity today. And then take another perpetuity formula at time T. So that one would be, the present value of that would be C divided by R. Oops, C divided by R. So that's the same perpetuity. But then you discount it by 1 plus R to the power of T, right? So that's our second perpetuity. So if you subtract perpetuity in time T, so you basically, if you subtract all these cash flows from a regular perpetuity, then you're left with annuity formula, which is exactly what that is, right? So that's how that formula, you know, was derived, kind of makes me, instead of memorizing it, that's how I think about it. It's just perpetuity at time 0 minus perpetuity at time t. And then if the annuity grows, then you're kind of subtracting this growth rates from the discount rate, and then this thing is different because you know, in the second perpetuity you have to grow the cash flow, right? That's why I have 1 plus G. You will have these formulas on your cheat sheet, so not a big deal. I just wanted to refresh them and, you know, make sure you understand. Any questions here?
I have a question. Besides the two on cheat, are we allowed class notes for the midterm or the final?
What do you mean by class notes?
So I don't know, like let's say besides the cheat sheet that we have, and if we have like our own notes in our notebook, can we use that as well?
Well, you know, like if we were in the classroom, like I would tell you no, but I guess it's hard for me to control, you know, what you'll be using because you'll take it online. I don't think you really need anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I saw some people step out. Let's take just a couple of minutes, maybe, you know, bio break. So I'll come back just in a second. And that's okay. Just take a 2-minute break. I'm back. Let's maybe reconvene. Yeah, thanks for turning on cameras. Appreciate it. So next problem, value of annuity. So we got 30-year annual payment mortgage. You know, these are pretty rare, but I guess it's for simplicity. It's not monthly. We'll do another example with monthly mortgage, which would be more realistic. But in this one, it's a 30-year annual payment mortgage with interest rate of 5%. Annual payment is $10.69. You've just decided you've just made a payment and decided to pay off the mortgage. What's the value? What's the payoff amount if you've lived in the house for 16 years? So just kind of 30-year mortgage, 15 in the middle. We are now in year 16. Gonna draw 17 here. So we are now in year 16 and we have made that payment. So the next payment will be in year 17. So it'll be 10,017 and so forth until year 30. So we can use annuity formula to calculate basically what's the value of these outstanding payments. We can do it using the formula, using the financial calculator, or both. Do people have preference where we start? Formula or calculator? Go ahead.
Formula.
All right, let's do formula. So PV, present value, this is year 16, by the way, is, so first to start with cash flow. So it's 10.698, I guess 10,698. And then the next factor is divided by 1 divided by R, which is interest rate, 5%. Multiplied by 1 minus 1 divided by, I'll call it 105, and to the power. So we'll have 14 payments left after year 16. So 105 to the power 14. What's the answer for that?
I got 105,895.
That's right. 105, 895. Let me do that on the financial calculator, and we'll see if we get the same number. So on the financial calculator is actually very simple. So the payment, there's a function here, PMT, payment. The payment is 10,698. I'll change sign because again, it always, if you enter positive numbers, you'll get negative NPV. I'll enter negative numbers, so we'll get the positive NPV. So that's payment. Interest rate 5. Number of payments N is 14. So you see this top left button for N, number of periods. And then we press NP. Well, yeah, I guess we press payment, PT here. So PV, yeah, this one. So it was payment, PMT, I for interest, and for number of periods, and then press. These are all white buttons, and then PV for the present value of the annuity. And I got the same number as we did on the calculator, like with the formula.
Professor, so the time you said we would be raising to the 14th, is that correct?
That's right.
How did you get to the 14th?
So the problem says that we've lived in the house for 16 years and we just made a payment, right? So if you count that, that should be 14.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. The next part, it's a very similar problem. It's actually exactly the same, except that it's asking what's the value, what's the payoff amount if you've lived in the house for 16 years and you decide to pay off the mortgage immediately before the 16th payment is due. You know, otherwise it's exactly the same problem. But now we're calculating the value before the 16th payment. So 16, 17, 15. And you know, it's almost like too simple, right? You may be thinking, well, we've calculated the value of these other cash flows, right? We calculated all that. So if we haven't, well, now if we've made the 16th payment, so sorry, if we haven't made the 16th payment, right? Then the only difference is the value of that 16th payment, right? So if we've done the exercise before that we just did, then the answer is actually very simple. So we would add 10,698 to the answer in the prior question, 105,895. So that gives us 116,593, right? But what I'm trying to illustrate with this problem is a concept of annuity due. And what annuity due is, it's annuity where the payment is due at the beginning of the period as opposed to the end, right? So if you've calculated the regular annuity, then you just add the first payment. So that's one approach. But let me show you another approach to calculate the value of annuity due. And you know, there's actually the functionality in the calculator built in for that. So you see this where the number 7 and 8 is, underneath it, there is begin or end. So if I press G begin under 7, then my calculator switches into begin mode. So all the calculations that I would do in this mode would assume that the cash flows are happening at the beginning of the period. And this would allow us to calculate annuity due in just one shot, rather than to do it traditional approach plus the first coupon. One thing to keep in mind, if I go back to this problem, now in the second part, we have 15 payments, right? In the first part, we had 14, but now we include the first payment. So my number of periods becomes 15. So I'll start there. I'll put in and 15. Interest rate is 5. Payment is still the same. 10, 6, 9, 8. Negative payment. And then present value. So the number is here 116,593.66, which is exactly what I just calculated on my slide, but this is kind of just calculating the annuity due on the calculator. Questions, comments?
So if we would have calculated exactly the same as we did at the beginning, but instead of adding the 14, we use 15.
Right.
That would have the payment due plus the interest, right? That would be the difference.
So in
because
the
if
first
we only
approach or
calculated
second?
with
Go ahead.
No, yeah, exactly. Just like the first approach, just instead of the 14 using the 15, what would be the difference?
It would be a different answer because you would be calculating 15 payments that start in year one. So you're kind of, I think the difference is probably you're kind of shifting your cash flows by 1 year. So if you divide this number, 116, by 1.05, that's probably what you would get in that situation that you're describing. But it's a different answer. So this annuity due concept is 15 payments that happen at the beginning of each period, right? Okay, well, let's move on. ER versus APR. So you've got effective annual rate. Let me remind you the formula. So ER, effective annual rate, is 1 plus APR, annual percentage rate, divided by number of periods. And then you take it to the power of the number of periods. So in the first part here, we've got 11% APR compounded monthly. So that means that EAR is 1 plus 0.11 divided by 12 to the power 12 minus 1. Does anybody have the answer for that?
I have 0.157.
I think it's 11% and then 5.
Yeah, 11%, 11.57.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, I mean, this is fairly straightforward. I just kind of wanted us to warm up. And then I have to free up some space here. Let me do the second one for the daily compounding. Same idea. So in the daily compounding case, we've got 1 plus 0.10 compounded daily. So you divide it by 365. Take all that to 365 power minus 1. What do you get?
Is it 10.5%?
52.
Yeah, 10.52%. Yep, pretty straightforward, nothing too complicated. But then in the second part here, it's a little bit different. That's when it gets more complicated. An investment earned a return of 3.2% over the period of 8 months. And let's assume that it's compounded monthly here. So the formula is a little bit different. So our effective annual rate becomes 1 plus, and I don't want to call it APR because it's a little bit different. It's like holding return, holding period return. So let me call it I. And then what we would do, we would divide it by, we'll say n divided by m to the power of n divided by m, where m is the number of periods in the holding period. And then n is number of periods in the year. So that's the formula we would need to solve this problem. Let me just do that maybe quickly for you, and then you'll do the second one. So we basically need to convert 3.2% earned monthly for 8 months. So we will start with 1.032. Enter. And then we need n over m. So n is 12 months in a year. Enter, divided by 8. So 1.5, and then I'll take 1 plus 3.2% to that power 1.5. I'll press y over x. I get 4.8%, 4.84. So that 3.2 over 8 months equates to 4.84 annually. So let's apply the same concept to this, the last problem here. So if you earned 2.8% over 156 day holding period, what's the EAR? So you think about this formula again. So it'll be 1 plus just the interest rate the way it is, 0.028. And then what's the power here? What's the number of days in the year?
365 over 156.
Yep. And what's that number?
I get 152.888.
Say it again,
152.88.
That's not what I was getting. Let me, is there any other numbers? Any other?
6.7%.
Yeah, but what's more precise?
1.0065.
So 6.675 is what I get percent.
I get 6.65.
What's that?
6.65 is what I get.
6.65. Let me just do it. Let me see. So 1.028. Let's say enter. And then we've got 365, enter. 156 divide. And then y over x. And gives me, and you subtract 1, so it's basically 6.675%. So the answer is what I wrote here, 6.675. Okay. By the way, I will turn off this beginning mode, which I had from our prior conversation. So I'll press G end. It can be a little bit tricky. So by default, you should be assuming that your cash flows happen at the end of the period. But now I had to turn it off for the next calculation. Unusual cash flow. A security pays $800 every 9 years forever. The appropriate discount rate is 2% AER. What's the value of the security if the first payment occurs 5 years from now? Majority timeline. So we got now year 0. We've got the first payment 5 years from now. We get 800. And then year 14, we get another 800. And then year 23. And so forth, right? So what's the value of this cash flow today if our annual interest rate is 2%? So let me kind of suggest a framework here. What I'd like to do is use the perpetuity formula. You know, perpetuity formula is pretty simple. It says take 800 payment divided by discount rate. But you know, the discount rate should be effective rate over 9 years. So what I'd like you to do is use this EAR concept and calculate what's 2% annually over 9 years. How would you do that? You just compound, right? You compound 2% for 9 years. Like, what do you get? So it's 102 to the power 9. What's our 9-year rate? Go ahead.
119.
Yeah, it's 19.51%, right? So that's our interest rate. Then we can apply the perpetuity formula. So I'll say 0, 1, 9, 5, 1. So does anybody have that number? I get 4,100. 100.
2.
Yeah. So that's the value of perpetuity in year 5. And then the last step is to take it from year 5 to now. So we just need to discount that by 102, and this is just annual discounting to the power of 5. What's that number? Starts with 3.
3,714.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. So that's the answer to that one. Yeah, a little bit unusual, but you kind of have to dissect it and apply these formulas. to this unusual cash flow problem. Okay, we've got about 15 minutes. I like the discussion, but we're kind of falling a little bit behind. So let's keep going. I think I like this exercise. So monthly compounding, this is pretty real problem with mortgage. So you have made an offer on a home and are seeking a mortgage. You need to borrow $646,000. The bank offers a 30-year mortgage with fixed monthly payment at monthly interest rate 0.52%. What's the amount of your monthly payment? Let me quickly draw a timeline, although it's fairly simple. Since it's monthly compounding and monthly payments, over 30 years, you'll have 360 payments. So we'll solve for the payment, but then what it's asking us is how much do you still owe on the mortgage after 15 years? So 15 years is 180 monthly payments. So to solve for that, what we would need to do is calculate the value of annuity between periods 180 and 360, right? So we'll have 180 payments, and we'll calculate the value of annuity to calculate what's outstanding in the middle of the mortgage. So let's do those two steps. Let me quickly do that because we're kind of running out of time. So to calculate the payment on a mortgage, I'll clear my memory here. So the present value is the value of the mortgage, 646,000. I'll take it with negative sign and I'll say it's present value. 0.52 is the interest rate. Number of periods is 360. So payment is 3,973 and 33. So payment 3,973.33. And then I need to calculate what's the value of annuity. So if I had 180 of those payments, what is present value in the middle of the mortgage? I think the other variables should be fine. So if I just say number of periods now is 180, is N. So what is my present value now? So the present value of 180 payments is 463,698. So that's PV in year 15 is 463.69848. So that's how much you still owe on the mortgage. Questions here? Were you able to follow? I kind of went through it a little bit quickly in the interest of time. Let me do one more problem together, and we'll jump into Excel for a change. And then we'll stop there. So let's just do one more exercise. So growing annuity, your brother has offered to give you 165 starting next year. After that, growing at 2.6% per year for the next 20 years. You'd like to calculate the value of this offer by calculating how much money you'll need to deposit in a local bank, which kind of has 5.5% interest rate. So the question is basically, what's the value of this growing annuity today? I'll do that in Excel just because in the second part, we're sort of, to solve for the second part, we kind of have to use Excel. So I'll do it now. And you could do the same thing on a calculator or using a formula. Let me do it in Excel quickly. So it's 165 payment, 2.6 per year, 2.6% per year growth rate. And then interest rate in the bank is 5.5%. Let me draw the timeline here. So the cash flows would be first year 165, and then the second year would be 165 times 1 plus the growth rate. And then I'll freeze the growth rate. So I'll press F4. Excel is behaving strange. Try to give it some time. But are you guys with me? You could continue actually. Why don't if you have this, just extend that formula from year 2 to year 20, right? Keep the growth rate fixed. And then, oh, okay, came back. All right. And then I'm pressing Control C, Control V. So to calculate the value of these payments in Excel, let's use the formula NPV. So equals NPV. The rate is the discount rate, 5.5%. Now I'll fix that. I'll fix the rate, and then I'll highlight all these cash flows. And then the other thing I will do here, I will freeze the column U here in my cash flows. I will press F4. Okay, well, I guess, let me do that again. I'll close it first. So it's NPV basically. So far it's pretty simple. It's column B7 through U7. But then what I'd like to do is freeze column U7. So so today's value is 2,431, right? Do people get that number?
Yes.
Okay, good. And then let's look at the next problem. So same problem, but look at the second bullet. Assuming you deposited present value you calculated in the previous part and withdrew the required payments each year, calculate the remaining balance. I actually had somebody reach out to me yesterday, kind of not understanding what it's been asking. What it's effectively asking us to do here is calculate the value of these payments at the end of year 1, 2, and so forth. So in Excel, it's actually very simple. Let me move this one out because this one is year 0. So in year 1, what I can do now, if I just drag my formula to the right, and again, see how it now skipped the first payment and it calculates NPV for 19 payments, so year 2 through 20. So that's, the value at the end of year 1, and then value at the end of year 2 is 2363, and you can actually drag it and calculate values at any point. So I think there's a homework exercise that asks you to do like year 19, and here's that number. Any questions here? No, I like the engagement, especially kind of in the middle of the class when, we were just kind of iterating. I like to keep it up, continue, that kind of, great participation. Just to kind of review what we did today is, we talked about compounds and discounting, calculated what, present value is, future value, and then we applied that for NPV, where you just take multiple cash flows, discount them to the present value. And then we kind of had some unique cases where your interest rates were different, or where the interest rate was given for partial year. How do you annualize that? We talked about annuities due. Nothing really too complicated there. Just, you either use a formula or use a calculator. And then in the next class, we'll continue applying this concept. So basically, can we use NPV formula for bond valuation or stock valuation? So that's the plan for the next class. So you've got the homework coming out of today's class. You need to just finish up those assignments, and then the next piece of homework will be due before next Saturday. So we'll kind of have this cadence: homework before the class, and then smaller portion after the class. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy. I think, this online format works even better than in class. I teach it exactly the same class in person, and it's a giant auditorium, and people are kind of shy to speak up in front of others, while I think online is just more casual. So I really enjoy it. I think it went well. So let me know if you have any final questions or comments. I'm available for office hours. Book it using my calendar on Calendly. If you do that, put in the class code 6201 in the subject, so that I know, because I've got several classes going on. I've got some other things. So if you book something in my calendar, just put 6201, and I'm happy to answer any questions.